You know I love GarageBand, but there's one thing in it that drives me crazy. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the Band Guide, where we use GarageBand to create professional sounding music. I'm your band guy, Colin, and today we're talking about the worst thing in GarageBand. It's not really that bad, and you can work around it, and I've still done mixes that I'm proud of with GarageBand with only the stock things inside GarageBand. So this is not make or break, but there's something in GarageBand that just irks me a little bit every time I'm trying to use it, and that is the compressor. The compressor plugin has so much potential, but is missing one critical thing, and it just doesn't have it on it at all. And there's not a great workaround inside GarageBand as it currently stands unless you bring in another plugin. Well, luckily, as we talked about in my last video, there is another plugin manufacturer called Analog Obsession that is making incredible sounding plugins that you can download for free and start using inside GarageBand. And their compressor plugins can really help you fill that gap that GarageBand has kind of created in the compression sphere, if you will. Now, compression is a huge part of creating a professional sounding mix. You have to use at least some compression on probably every single song to really have it sound as good as possible. But the compressor inside GarageBand has been a little bit tricky for me to teach because it's missing a key element. And that is any sort of metering or anything that's accurately showing you exactly how much compression is actually happening. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you're looking at just about any compressor, you're going to have some amount of a measurement of how much gain reduction is happening. Gain reduction is the standard metering for compression. Gain reduction is measuring how many decibels the sound is being turned down by the compressor. So you get a sense of how intense is this compression. Now, the actual settings still impact how intense the compression sounds. But, obviously if you're getting negative 20 decibels of gain reduction, it's going to sound more intense of negative 2 decibels of gain reduction. So having an accurate way to measure gain reduction is really important. So on this compressor, we can see we have a meter right here. And this meter is going to show us, if we play a little bit of the sample, every time this compressor kicks in, we're getting about 4 decibels, roughly 3 to 4, sometimes maybe it kicks up to about 5 decibels of gain reduction on this kick drum. That's a good indicator. In this case, I'm not going for really intense compression. I just want a little bit of gain reduction. Somewhere in that 3 to 5 decibel range is what I'm going for. And so now I can very accurately set that, and I don't have to wonder, am I actually doing 15 or 20 decibels and I can't just quite tell? Ultimately, as long as it sounds good, don't worry about it, but this is a really great way to start understanding better using compression is by having accurate metering. And if you compare that to the GarageBand stock compressor, for example, let's go down to this compressor. So this is the stock compressor from GarageBand. We don't have any indication on this compressor of how much gain reduction is happening on this compressor. Now, if you're using it on an audio track, your first instance will, if it auto-populates, we'll have a meter built in over here. So if we play a little bit of this here, this is on the snare bottom, and I turn this compressor on, and I bring this threshold down, we'll start to see it kick on a little bit, right? Now, the issue here is twofold. One, if I wanted to add a second instance of compression with the stock compressor, we'll just go down here to the compressor. I don't get another visual indicator for this. Also, if I'm working on a drummer track or a synth instrument, any sort of virtual instrument, if you add the compressor on, you're not going to get this visual indicator. But even with this visual indicator, you don't get necessarily accurate metering. So when I was first really familiarizing myself with the GarageBand compressor, I did a few tests to understand, well, what exactly do these lights show us? Because some gain reduction is indicated with lights. They will say one light is 3 decibels of gain reduction, 2 lights is 5 decibels of gain reduction. Well, with my test, what I found is it varies. This is not necessarily gain reduction being indicated here. It's kind of more how much compression in general is happening. Now, you can still use that. That's still valuable information. I talk about that in my compression cheat sheet and how you can still use this meter to accurately set your compressor. But again, if you're putting on one of those virtual instruments or a drummer, anything like that, you don't necessarily get the same kind of metering. Whereas if let's create a drummer track here. If I create a drummer track, we'll hit B and Y to get rid of that. So right now, I don't see any metering for this compressor, right? I can just see amount. I don't see actual metering. But if I were to put on, let's say, that compressor I had at first here, I could accurately now preset compression for this and see how much gain reduction I'm getting from that compressor. It's pretty great, right? And it gives you a lot more of an accurate idea of how much gain reduction is actually happening. So to fix this problem in GarageBand, I'd recommend two things. First is download that first compressor I talked about, that speed compressor. That's going to be a great starting point because it has all the settings in the compressor that you need. You have your takt time, your ratio, your threshold, your makeup gain. That's going to really help you out because now you have this accurate metering as well, which is going to make it easier to understand exactly what that compressor is doing, no matter what kind of track you put it on. Second, because ultimately just getting a better compressor isn't actually going to help anything, you need to better understand compression. So the best thing that you can do to better understand compression is download my completely free compression cheat sheet. I'll link to it in the description below. This cheat sheet walks through exactly what compression is and how to set it to create a more professional sound inside GarageBand. Now, I'll even talk about how to do this with the stock compressor, any compressor. So this is really going to be helpful to just better understand compression, better use compression inside GarageBand. And before we go, I want to hear from you. What do you think of the GarageBand compressor? I actually think it sounds really good. It's just very frustrating to me how it doesn't have any metering built into it, and it's inconsistent. If I put it on some tracks that I don't get metering, if I want to add two compressors on, I don't get metering, compared to a normal compressor where every time I put it on, I'm going to have metering built into the plugin. I think that's a lot more helpful. But let me know what you think of the GarageBand compressor in the comments below. If this video is helpful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week with another video.
One thing at a time, I can